Now remember, the DA is going to say a lot of stuff about you that isn't true. You're going to want to react. Don't. Just stay cool. How you feeling?
Scared to death.
All rise. People v. William Brennan on the charge of murder in the first degree.
Just because you're a member of one of the city's most prominent families doesn't mean you can get away with murder.
No one wants to get away with anything. We just want our day in court.
I like that you fight and that you don't back down.
I fight because most people don't or won't.
Our client's blood matches the blood on the murder weapon. That's a very big deal.
You realize you're not very comforting.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's going to be fine.
Is that what I taught you? To go into the courtroom thinking you probably, hopefully, maybe have this? Put together a winnable case.
I think that you are cracking under pressure and you are taking it out on me. And oh my God, I'm yelling at my boss.
The fact that you're having these feelings means you're good at your job. The minute you stop feeling for your clients is when you need to go back to the farm.
Not everyone from Iowa lives on a farm.
This gentleman is looking for a job and would like an audience with the big dog. Should I call security?
It's a free country. He could stay all day if he wants.
All right, let's start this trial.
Your Honor, it's been 24 years since Amy Myers was senselessly murdered. A significant likelihood the evidence was tainted.
We have reasonable doubt. You never asked me if I did it.
I'm your lawyer. I defend you whether
You're
or
not
not.
just my lawyer.
Do I need to take you off Billy Brennan's case? You're falling for him.
Everyone thinks I killed Amy. And I keep trying to tell myself that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, but it matters to me what you think.
I met a guy, Mom, but it's so complicated and I don't know what to do.
You believe he's innocent, fine. But right now, innocence doesn't matter. Winning this case matters.
Whatever's going on between you two, just end it.
Please let me go.
Doubt. Looks great, right?
Hey, everybody.
This show is so fantastic. Thank you so much for being here to talk to us about it. And it's also, many people saying, it's breaking ground with your casting. Does it feel like you're breaking ground, or does it feel like you just got a great role?
It is a great role, and I guess it felt groundbreaking when we were shooting. You won't see this tonight, but later in the season, that's why you have to watch tonight, and you have to get your friends to watch so you're like caught up. Because when everybody starts talking about it, and you're not, like, you're behind, isn't it the worst feeling? Everybody's, you have to see this, and you haven't seen it yet, so you can have an opportunity to be on the ground floor of the new show. But later on in the first season, when the romantic interest sort of comes into Cameron Wirth, Cameron is my character. When we started shooting that part, I was like, okay, this is something I've never seen on TV before. I haven't personally never seen a trans woman be pursued by a straight identified man on national television knowing that she's transgender. That felt revolutionary, that felt groundbreaking, and it was really exciting for me as an actress who's always wanted to see that, who I've dated a lot in New York City, as we do. And my experiences dating are unique. There is something universal about looking for love, I think, but then there's something unique about doing it while you're a transgender woman. And I've just wanted to see that story being told on television and in film, and we tell a little bit of that story in Doubt, and it feels pretty awesome. So did they bring the sort of unique perspective that you personally had to tell in that story as well, or was it more along the lines of like, everybody's looking for love, this is a character of our show, just looking for love like anybody else? The writers, what was wonderful about, there's so many wonderful things about this process, but the writers for Doubt back in June of last year invited all of the actors, the series regulars, into the writers' room to discuss their character arcs for the season and to give suggestions. And so when I relished that opportunity. I'd always wanted to visit a writer's room. The whole process just deeply fascinates me. And so I was so excited to be there, and they told me Cameron's arc for this season, and they were like, we want to have a love story for Cam. What are your thoughts? And can you tell us a little about your experience? I'm like, yeah. And I shared a lot, actually. And Joan, I was like, they were using everything I said. Which is wonderful. And it made me feel valued, deeply valued, that my voice was valued not only as an actress, but as someone who had had life experience to contribute. And it just was really moving for me to read the scripts and see how they incorporated some of my ideas. We also have a transgender writer in our writer's room, Imogen Benny, it's a big deal to not only have diversity in front of the camera, but also to have it behind the camera and have what I've personally noticed historically when I see trans characters, particularly on television, is that the character will be introduced and they don't necessarily know where to go with the character because they don't really know the nuances of our story.
Or they're very scared of the nuances because they do want to do justice to it, but they don't exactly know how to write it, so they shy away from it.
So it really does help to have someone. I don't think it's always necessary, but I think it helps to have someone who has the experience to be in the writer's room contributing to the story. So that's very exciting.
Without giving anything away, is there anything that you can share about your perspective that was brought into the show and into this story?
What can I say? Oh, I can say this. It's already sort of been advertised. I thought that Cameron should have other transgender friends. I think so often when we see marginalized people on television, they can be isolated. If it's not like an all-black show or an all-whatever show, they could be isolated, and I didn't want Cam to be isolated. I wanted to locate her somehow in community, and they love that idea, and so they gave Cam 2 trans girlfriends, and they have, and they ended up hiring 2 of my good friends from real life. I told them when they were doing the audition process, I know a lot of trans people who are also actors because it's a small community. And I was like, I don't want to sort of give any feedback about who you should hire. I think you should just hire the best actors. And 2 of the people that they thought were best and they thought would be my friends were my friend Jen Richards and my friend Angelica Ross, who they happen to be really dear friends in real life too. They worked on the Emmy-nominated YouTube series Her Story together. And so it was really weird when we were filming and we were sort of having girl talk, and it felt like girl talk we've had in real life around a table, and that was really dope. So that's one thing I can kind of tell you. So what was really great for me about that is that I have a core group of girlfriends who I'm seeing tonight. During the premiere, we're having a little viewing party, and I'll be live tweeting tonight. Is that I got to reflect that truth of my life in that moment, but then we also got jobs for trans actors, which is really nice. And there's another trans actor who also works on the first season of Doubt. So I'm proud of that. And that's really, that's our writers and our creators who wanted to, just hire people who looked like New York. The show is set in New York, and we wanted a show that reflected the beautiful diversity of New York. One of the best things about living here for me is all the amazing, people from all over the world, from different cultures and races and backgrounds. That is deeply exciting to me about living in New York City. And so our show reflects that.
I have to ask this, and I don't want to get too political or specifically political, but you were shooting the show probably last year, right? You were in the writer's room last year. You're having these incredible meetings with the creators and the writers about how to have the characters as well as the writer's room and the creators of the show be sort of greater represent the whole of the community of New York City, including the transgender community. And you shoot the show, you're making it, and then the election happens, and suddenly we have this symbolic who's actually doing things at this point now to roll back rights. But at the very least, November 9th, we suddenly had this symbolic representation of a violator of transgender and just human rights in general in this country. What was it like to still know that you had this, though, in the bank? If that makes, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I had so many feelings after the election, and what was really great for me afterwards is being able to work and being able to go and do a show and tell stories. I play a defense attorney named Cameron Wirth, and where we get to tell stories of people who've become involved in the criminal justice system, a system that is supposed to presume innocence but so often does not, and criminalizes certain members of our population more than others. And to be on a show where Isaiah Roth, who is my boss, played in the show, played by Elliot Gould, says in one of our trailers, "Stop thinking like a lawyer and start thinking like a freedom fighter." Isaiah Roth is a dude who, you know, protested in the 60s and was very sort of radicalized. He went to jail, would go to jail for his clients, still goes to jail for his clients. We see that in the first episode tonight. And I've often said if Bernie Sanders started a law firm, it would probably be like Roth and Associates. And so I love that we have this show that what Tony Phelan, one of our showrunners, says is about a group of radical left-wing lawyers. I love that, but it's not just about our perspectives. It's also, we see the other side of these criminal cases, and I think it often, the way they write it, they've written almost every episode, we see both sides. We see that the potential innocence or guilt or the reasons why someone might, even though we always want to get our clients acquitted, the reasons why someone might want to incarcerate someone. So I think it makes us think critically, and it complicates our ideas about the criminal justice system in a really beautifully human way. And I think when you are telling really human stories, it encourages you to see both sides of that story.
Absolutely. When just to clarify, when I said in the bank, I meant this sort of emotional pull that you are still progressing and moving forward, and you have a show on one of the biggest networks that is in many ways a symbol of that progress and moving forward. Even though this man may have been elected, there is still this progress that you know is going to be coming out in February.
Yeah.
Not like in the bank financially.
I think everyone after the, I don't know, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of folks after the election I had to rethink my place in the world. And I've been thinking a lot about what empathy looks like for people who may think differently from me. And what does it mean for me to really try to put myself in the shoes of other people who live in different parts of the country who voted for our current president. So but it is really my job as an artist, as an actor, to have empathy and without judgment for the characters that I play, and I try to carry that over into my life as much as I can. And so I certainly was challenged after the election to do that more.
Moving aside from the election, at the Grammys the other night, you gave this, you told people to Google Gavin Grimm. Gavin Grimm is an amazing story. He's going to be going to the Supreme Court soon. Did you tell anybody that you were going to say that before you got on stage? Did you just do it? And what was the response like? I thought it was beautiful. And thank you for doing that. People should be Googling Gavin's story.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. I did not tell anybody. I didn't want anyone to tell me I couldn't do it, so I just was like, I'm gonna do this. And I was sort of frustrated with the fact that enough people weren't talking about Gavin's case. Gavin Grimm is a 17-year-old young man from Gloucester, Virginia,
who is incredible. He is so inspiring.
He really is. He really is amazing. He's 17 years old, and he is transgender and just wanted to use the boys' bathroom like all the other boys in his school, and was told he couldn't, and he sued the school board, won his case on appeal, and the Supreme Court decided to hear the case, which means they've stayed his win, and so he's a senior now at his high school, and he won't be able to use the boys' room this senior year, and the Supreme Court decision should come around June. But he is so impassioned, articulate, and clear about his rights, who he is, and what he deserves. And I can't help but think about when I was 17 years old, 2 years ago, and 2 months ago, and having the courage and the clarity that he has, and it's, if the Supreme Court rules against Gavin, that could set trans rights back decades, right? What's at stake? So Gavin was able to win his case on appeal because the appeals court basically determined that transgender people are covered under Title IX, which bans discrimination based on sex in our educational institutions. Other trans folks have won similar cases based on Title IX protections and Title VII protections, which ban discrimination based on sex in the workplace and public accommodations. The Supreme Court has never ruled or made a decision about whether Title IX protects trans people. It's funny, I remember being on a date years ago. A lot of my lawyer research for Dow was dating lawyers here in New York. And I remember I was on a date with the dude many, many years ago, and he was saying that this is before marriage equality was passed, and he was saying that he thinks trans people have a better case for protections because of Title IX and Title VII, right? So these are conversations I've had with lawyers on dates and otherwise for many years.
But specifically on dates.
Specifically on dates. About Title IX and Title VII being protecting trans folks, and some judges and some courts and EEOC have ruled that that is in fact the case. The Supreme Court has yet to do that. And over the past year, we've seen, most notably in North Carolina, HB 2 was passed, which is a bill that criminalized trans people using the bathroom that is consistent with our gender identity. 50 similar bills were introduced in state legislatures last year. Like, crazy. A lot of them didn't pass. Some of them were voted on and vetoed, but 50 bills were introduced last year, similar bills, and a few this year as well, most notably SB 6 in Texas. A group of artists came out against SB 6 in Texas yesterday. And what I've been saying about this all week, and even for even longer than that, is what my friend Chase Strangio, who works at the ACLU, says about this, is that these anti-trans bathroom bills are not about bathrooms at all. They're about whether we believe transgender people have a right to exist in public space. Because if you cannot access a public bathroom, you can't go to schools, you can't go to healthcare facilities, you can't really work. And when I was watching Hidden Figures several weeks ago.
Just gonna get there.
I know, when I was watching Hidden Figures several weeks ago, when I saw when Taraji P. Henson's character had to walk 45 minutes to this colored bathroom in the Jim Crow South, I was like, oh my God, this is what Gavin Grimm had to go through. Because Gavin had to go to, they gave him access to a nurse's bathroom.
It's like a janitor's closet that was refashioned into a bathroom or something like that, right?
Something like that. It became a hardship for him to go every time he had to pee, to go way into this other bathroom. And
also,
he was like,
symbolically, it's like you go here. Like, we built this little thing for you because you don't belong with everybody else.
The symbolism of it is deeply problematic, but the reality of it was also a hardship for him. And then eventually he said, can I just go to the boys' bathroom? They initially said yes. He went to the boys' bathroom for 7 weeks, no incident, everything was fine. Some parents found out about it and then they made a decision that he could not. And there's this video footage of him on YouTube testifying before the school board that is riveting. I think this is maybe a couple years ago. So he was 15 years old, standing up and saying, people are talking about my body parts and talking about me as if I'm not human, and I'm human, and he said, I'm a young man, and that I just want to go to the bathroom like everybody else and not be singled out. And there's a similar case that happened in Colorado many years ago with Coy Mathis. She was 6 years old, wanted to use the bathroom. She won her case. Nicole Maines, who's featured in the HBO documentary The Trans List, she had a similar suit against the state of Maine many years ago. The governor famously met her and said, well, this girl has to go to the little girl's room. And so she got the right in Maine to use the girls' bathroom. Jazz Jennings, who you know from TLC, the TLC show I Am Jazz, had similar battles to play on this girls' soccer team and also access facilities. So trans children have been fighting these fights for a very long time, and Gavin Grimm is the case that's going to the Supreme Court. So I'm encouraging everyone to stand with Gavin and to elevate the stories of trans people. The way we were able to win marriage equality in the Supreme Court is that those justices knew people who were gay and lesbian. They knew that all the sort of misconceptions or sort of stories that were not accurate about the lives and the humanity of gay and lesbian people were not accurate, and they deserve this right. And so we have to continue to change the narrative about who trans people are. The opponents of trans equality have been saying that this is a privacy issue, right? That in Texas, they're saying we have to protect women and girls. This is what they're saying. So they're saying that that me needing to go to the bathroom is somehow a threat to the privacy of women and girls, and oh God, it's like, I mean, trans people have been peeing for a very long time, and and in cities like New York City that have had public accommodations protections for based on gender identity and expression for a long time, there's hundreds of cities all over the country that have had these protections. And all the things that they're saying will happen. Well, then a sexual predator can claim that he's transgender and access a women's bathroom and assault a woman. I'm like, sexual assault is still illegal. You know, that's something that is still not. That doesn't actually happen. It's like it's crazy. And then to suggest
like
that
everything else in the right, there's absolutely no evidence to support their claims or their beliefs.
So, and then it further shames and stigmatizes and criminalizes trans people. They're like you have to go to jail if you are caught and if you are assigned male at birth and you're in a women's bathroom and you identify as trans. Like they want to put us in jail, and that is ultimately what this is really about. It is about further criminalizing and stigmatizing trans people because they don't want us to exist. Someone in North Carolina, when the controversy was happening last year, because I was like, you don't really want me in the men's bathroom. I'm like, you don't really. I mean, like, I don't think they really want that. And then, like, so they don't want me in the women's bathroom. So it's like, and then someone's like, well, where should we pee? And someone said at home in North Carolina. Someone said this, and so, oh yeah. And so I think that is what is at issue. Do we have the right to exist in public space? And these laws are attempts to erase trans people from existence. And there's so many things about it. That's this culture. I can go on all about this all day. That seek to erase trans people. We don't count trans people in the census. We don't have accurate numbers about how many trans people there are. Systematically, we're erasing trans people. The very idea of binary bathrooms erases trans people, and particularly non-binary people. So we're here. We've always been here. Trans people have existed from the beginning of time. If we know our history, that there are indigenous cultures all over the world with third and fourth gender traditions, and we were revered often in these cultures. In India, most notably comes to mind, the Hijra in India. You could not get married, and you should not get married without a Hijra blessing your wedding or blessing the christening of your child. And with colonialism and Christianity being sort of colonized all over the world, the Hijra were sort of became these second-class citizens in India at the time. And so when we talk about gender freedom, it is linked to an anti-colonialist point of view. The link between colonialism and the oppression of trans people they're inextricably linked. And so then the conversation has become intersectional, and now I'm just going off.
Clap, clap now. That was amazing. I want to hear you clap for her. Thank you.
Anyway, what's really great about a show, but working with the folks that I work with on Doubt, is that they understand all these things. They understand that this system is rigged against certain people, and we do everything we can to have conversations about that and to create empathy and compassion for our clients and convey that to jurors, to judges, and hopefully to the millions. Hopefully it'll be millions of people watching the show at home.
Laverne, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to questions. That's not the end. I just wanted to tell her she was amazing. I am going to ask a silly question, though. You got to meet Beyonce at the Grammys. What was that
That's
like?
Not a question. Oh, that's the question part.
There you go.
I'm feeling saucy right now.
It started.
I feel like all I've been talking about is Doubt and Gavin Grimm and meeting Beyonce since Sunday.
What do you want to talk about?
I could talk about meeting Beyonce. She was very, very kind. They brought her down the aisle during commercial break. It was after she performed, and I'd seen her publicist backstage, and I was like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm sure Beyonce would love to meet you, and let me see if she's getting dressed or not." And so she went in. Beyonce was getting dressed, and so she's like, "She can't see you now, but when where are you sitting? When we bring her out, we'll have her stop by your seat and say hi." And I told her where I'm sitting, and so Beyonce, the commercial comes, they bring Beyonce out. She does not stop at my seat. I'm like, okay, maybe it's not, because I've been in the room with Beyonce many times and have not met her. So I was sort of prepared not to meet her this time. And so they take her down the aisle. She's on the first row, of course. And the commercial break comes, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. So my girlfriend Trace, I'm like, Trace, I'm gonna go for it. So I get up because I know that she knows who I am because Yvette and her publicist and her stylist have told me that they've talked about me with Beyonce. They've shown Beyonce videos of me dancing to her music and at the VMAs and at the Global Citizen concert, at her concert, in my bedroom, on the street, whatever, everywhere. So she knows who I am, according to them. And then she sent me flowers after my lip sync battle performance of Lose My Breath by Destiny's Child. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. So we did, of course, we had to do some Beyonce, and I loved doing the Destiny's Child throwback for lip sync battle. So she sent me flowers and an amazing card, and I, cried and was in shock when that happened. So I went up, so I knew she knew who I was. So I went up and everyone was surrounding her and, trying to talk to her. And she was sitting there and I kind of peeked my head around so I can kind of get her attention. She saw me, her face lit up, and she was like, oh my God, somebody help me up. Like, Beyonce wants to get up for me. And I was like, I'll help you up. And so then her security helps her up, and then she gives me a big hug, and she's like, it's so good to meet you. I'm like, it's so good to meet you, and I love you. She's like, I've loved you since Destiny's Child. She's like, I know, everybody's been telling me. And she's like, your lip sync battle was incredible. I was like, thank you for the flowers. She was so genuinely sweet and genuinely elated to meet me, which was just It was really crazy, and it was unbelievable. And I thought, does anybody rehearse when you think you're gonna meet somebody famous? You do little rehearsals in your room when you're like, okay, when I meet Beyonce, I'm gonna say this. So when I meet, the Queen of England, I'm gonna do this or whatever it is. And so I've rehearsed this many times in my head. I'm kind of embarrassed, but girl, this is just the truth. And so I thought I would cry, and it's a strange calm came over me though when I went over to meet her, and she was so calm and so centered, and so she had just performed beautiful. And it's so funny. Just last week I was rewatching Lemonade, and I love Sandcastles. And I was like, she hasn't done this live yet. I want to hear her sing Sandcastles, and she did it on Sunday, and it was beautiful and amazing. I felt like she was singing to her babies. And anyway, so she was just in so much love and peace, and she just a person who knows who she is. And Jay was there with Blue, and he was just so proud for that. He was smiling. I think they all know that I'm a huge fan. I felt like it was a conversation in the Carter Knowles household. Like, oh my God, Laverne's meeting Beyonce. This is a moment. Because Jay-Z was back there like, oh wow, cool. He was looking like, this is happening.
Here we go. This will be fun. Let's watch this.
This is my interpretation. I don't know if he may have been thinking about how beautiful his daughter is and his wife who's pregnant. So it was incredible, and at the end I bowed to her, and there were photographers there, so they took pictures. And there's not a picture of me bowing, but I suggest if you meet a queen that you should bow to her. And Beyonce tells you to bow down, bitches. So,
unbelievable.
Bow down, bitches.
Let's take some questions from the audience right here.
Hey, it's so great to meet you.
Hi, what's your name?
Jakara.
Hi, Jakara.
Hi. I just wanted to know, since you are such an influential person, intersectionally influential, not only to the trans community, but to the Black community, the women community, who were some influential people in your life? And a follow-up question to that would be, as an inspiring screenwriter and filmmaker myself, I really want to include more trans stories in my work. And I want to know, what's the most important thing to include about trans stories, and what's the important thing not to put in there?
Good questions. Okay. Since you mentioned intersectionality, the person who got me thinking about intersectionality way back in the day in college was Bell Hooks, reading Bell Hooks' books. And I've been doing a college tour for several years and talking about her work and how influential it was to me. It has been to me. I got to meet her. We've become friends, which has been amazing. So her work continues to influence me. People like Beyonce, and when I was a kid, artists like Leontine Price, who's an opera singer, and Katherine Dunham, who's a modern dancer, and Arthur Mitchell, who's a classical ballet dancer, who's the first Black black dancer to dance for the New York City Ballet and who started the Dance Theater of Harlem, and Marian Anderson, who was an opera singer who sang, at the Lincoln Memorial famously when the Daughters of the American Revolution did not allow her to sing because she was black. And so there were artists who deeply inspired me as a kid, particularly black artists whose art was their activism. And I was a dancer growing up. I started out as a dancer, and I imagined as a kid, I hoped as a kid that when I grew up, my art could rise to the level that it would be so good that it could make things better for the people who would follow me, and that my art might be a form of activism in some way. And so those are the folks who inspired me. In terms of writing stories for trans people, what not to include, I think transition narratives are really boring and passé and tired, and I'm like over it.
And that's where doubt, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but doubt is actually like a post, they specifically told your story, your character's story as someone who's far beyond their transition.
Yeah, transition narratives are tired. That's just
similar to the coming out narrative at this point.
Yeah, it's tired. We don't really care. And I think, and I've been very much an advocate of the fact that transition narratives and particularly surgery and genital conversations objectify trans people. But when I saw her story last year, it made me rethink that. I think that we can have conversations about trans people and bodies if we are able to decenter the patriarchal and the cis-sexist point of view, decenter those frameworks. And what I mean is that in her story, it's that the point of view, the world is so decidedly queer. And so then I think the only way I think we can have conversations about trans people and bodies is if we decenter the patriarchal and cis-sexist gaze. And cis-sexist, when I say cis-sexist, I'm referring to cisgender. And cisgender is basically someone who's not transgender. They're gender identity aligns with the gender they were assigned at birth. So if you are able to, in your script, create a world where the patriarchal gaze and the cis-sexist gaze is being subverted, then maybe you can have a conversation about trans people and bodies that does not objectify trans people and is empowering for trans people. I found those conversations I can only really have with girlfriends and in really specific places. I don't have those conversations in mainstream media because the mainstream media is not, the patriarchal and cis-sexist gaze has not been decentered or fully subverted in mainstream media. We're working on it, but it is what it is. Is that clear? Is that clear? Okay.
How would you define, or how would you define the sort of patriarchal or cisgender gaze? As someone, speaking personally, as someone who I would never define myself as an ally because it's not up to me to define myself that way, but it's someone who strives to be an ally is also like a cisgender straight man. So I would imagine I have, without a doubt, a patriarchal gaze at times, even though attempting not to, slip
all
up.
internalize the patriarchal gaze. That the reality is we all internalize. We all live in a system that, in a country, let's talk about America, in a country that was built on the backs of slave labor. That's the truth of America. A country that exists on the genocide of a people, Native American folks. That's America. I think I love our country. I'm a proud American, but that's the truth of this country, a country that women didn't have the right to vote. This idea of democracy where a lot of people were disenfranchised during the founding of the country, and so the system has been set up excluding a lot of people. And so we all grow up in that same system. We all grow up in the patriarchal gaze, for me, is something I've certainly internalized. I make aesthetic choices, thinking, is a man gonna, I dress differently when I might be going on a date and I want a man to think I'm attractive. And that's is that my internalized, sort of sexist patriarchal gaze? Yeah, it is. And are we all living in those contradictions? Most of us are. I think it's about how do we decenter the patriarchal gaze, it is about elevating the voices of folks, not only women and trans people, but people who think different, think outside of that, who have created ways of being and knowing that move outside of what is. It's kind of the Bechdel test where we have, do you know that test for film
and
TV, where do you have more than one female character, and are these female characters talking about something other than a man? That is a really great framework, I think, in terms of thinking about how do our lives and what is this patriarchal gaze. And the cis-sexist gaze is something that basically, the gaze that privileges cisgender people and sort of exoticizes trans people in this way where we're not the center. So I think it's about where do we, all the folks who are on the margins creating storylines where they're at the center. That's what's, I'm going to bring it back to doubt, but it's really exciting to have this trans storyline where I'm dating a cisgender straight dude, but it's from my perspective. It's not like we're getting into his head and his whatever. We don't always even fully know what's going on with him, but it's from my, it's for me that in a fundamental way subverts that.
It's not about his perception of the relationship with you. It's about your characters, the start. It's about your character's perceptions of the relationship.
Yeah. Is that clear?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I think it's also the moving away from patriarchy. It's also constantly critically interrogating what we thought we knew about the world, and I think that is the really painful thing. And that's the only way trans folks are going to be able to be fully integrated. We have to create spaces where it is okay to critically interrogate everything we thought we knew for sure. The idea that there's just men and women is something that has to be challenged. That gender exists on a spectrum. That idea, that theory has to be challenged, and we have to critically interrogate that in order to make space for trans and gender nonconforming people, and that can be a painful process. Critically interrogating for a cis, straight, white, I think you're white, man might be a really painful process for you to really critically think about the ways in which you are privileged. When I think about the ways in which I'm privileged, it has been really painful for me. Even though I'm black and trans and a woman, I've got an education, and now I'm kind of famous, and there's all kinds of privileges that come with that. So those processes can be deeply painful, but what I do also know for sure is that on the other side of that pain is a possibility of greater connection, empathy, and compassion.
100%, absolutely. I think we have time for one more question.
If you can go back in time as your older self and speak to your younger self, what piece of powerful advice would you give to your younger self for the future?
Today, that changes every day, but today what I would say to my younger self is, it depends on what year we go back to, too. But what I would say basically to my younger self is that you're on the right path. You are frustrated now. This all sucks. You feel like there's no space in the world for you, and there's not. But everything that you're going through, every tear that you're shedding, every fear that you're having, every trauma that you are reliving is for a reason, and is for something bigger. Without a test, there is no testimony, and you're being tested right now. And hold on, learn the lessons that you must learn from this test, because that will make the testimony that much stronger later. And there will be ways through your art that you can express this testimony, and there will be ways when you sit before a group like I'm sitting before now, where you can testify that, I don't want to say it gets better, but that there is a reason. There is a reason that you're here that is bigger than you can imagine. And everything that you must do now is to connect with that reason and that purpose that you are here. And once you do that, the universe will conspire in magical ways to give you space to have this miraculous testimony before the world.
On that note, Doubt premieres tonight at 10 p.m. on CBS. Ladies and gentlemen, Laverne Cox, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.